I feel like the art of conversation and allowing yourself to get off track and kind of explore the weird rabbit holes of your mind is a little bit lost on culture
For sure.
today.
Yeah.
Because we always are like checking our watches and like
Yeah.
late for something.
Mhm.
I'm guilty
Yeah.
of that too, but
And
this has helped me realize that.
everything's moving so fast all the
Yeah.
time. And so like, you've got to be straight to the point. You got to do your thing. You got places to be. And I'm so bad at that. I'm the person that's like, hey, can I have like Jacob and I are so bad at this where I'll be like, hey, can I call you for a second? And then we'll be on the phone for like 15 minutes. And I'm like, what? Like I'm in a hurry. Why?
Yeah.
Like,
all right. I gotta go.
I stayed on the phone. Like,
Right.
And
Yeah.
he does the same thing where he's like, hey, can I need to tell you something really quick and I have like a minute. I know you're at work. And I'll like answer. And then he'll like tell me the thing and it's really cool. And then he'll just start like talking about stuff. And I'm interested. And I'm just like,
But you're on the clock.
I'm just like, I gotta go. This is really good. I like this. Oh man.
Table this for later. Yeah.
Hey,
Speaking of table this.
Yeah.
tell me about this.
Let's pour.
Tell me about this coffee.
Typically, we're drinking.
How do? Oh, this is so cool. How do you drink it?
Oh, it's sick.
do
You
you-
just send it.
What do you?
No, I'm kidding. You just take the lid off. This is a
lid.
splash guard. So
you're a splash
it
guard.
like it like trickles out. So leave that in there.
Okay, leave that in there, but take lid off. Got
Yes. But it keeps it really hot for a long time. And it's
it. So hot.
it's white ceramic on the
Do I
inside.
take this out to pour it in? Yeah. Pour it in. What are we drinking, fellas?
So your boy over here is a goofball.
So this is from Harris Coffee.
So our podcast is sponsored by Quickwater Coffee. So
Nice.
shout out to Quickwater and Steven over there. They're doing great stuff.
All these cameras are functional. I can just
Look at which
eye them all.
mainly
Hi.
those two. Yeah,
Hi.
your camera is that one over there.
Camera one. Can we have cue cards?
Cue
You need a
cards.
cue card.
Can we teleprompt?
Yeah. It's so authentic.
so real. So we love Quickwater on this show, and Steven's great. However, Nate and I and Joe were in the studio on Saturday. Here, we were here.
Cool. This studio.
This studio.
This is the studio.
tracking.
Local Legend Recording.
Shout out.
Yep.
And I brought coffee to make because we keep the Chemex here, and I brought coffee back from Montana, and I was in
Nice.
Montana a couple weeks ago, and I brought that for them to try it on Saturday, and my brain was just like, oh, we'll just use that for the podcast on Monday, like not thinking that we need to drink.
Bring our sponsors
Quickwater,
coffee.
our own sponsors coffee. So we are not officially drinking Quickwater coffee today. We're not going to shout out the other coffee place.
Yeah.
And we still love Quickwater and we still love you, Steven. So
But if, for fun, we could, if you want to guess
yeah,
what the other coffee
right.
is.
Feel free to guess. We won't tell you if you're right or wrong, but
Well, like hot or cold?
yeah,
Colder.
warmer.
Oh, man. Well, welcome, Christian.
Yes.
CT.
Thank you.
I haven't decided what I want to call you yet.
Life
so I'm
in the
calling you both.
CT.
Yeah.
You were gonna tell me the story behind CT, but I feel like maybe just I don't know if we need to explain how we know him or just jump into the story. Why don't you just jump into the story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to touch this mic so many times.
Okay.
I hope
It's
you know
fine.
that. I'm a musician, so adjusting mics is like a tick. So the way the story starts always sounds like I'm a huge brag, but I will quickly squash those things. So I wrote a book Not successful, so don't worry. But I wrote a book, and apparently there is already a Christian McCallister author out there. This was back in 2014, so I was like 19, just out of high school, thought I could write, and it's not good. It's not good, but yeah, I saw that there was already an author out there, and I was like, well, maybe I should come up with a pen name, and was exploring like some names that had nothing to do with myself. And then I was, I didn't really like anything, decided, well, why don't I just use my initials and just do CT McCallister and just go for it. And so that's what I did. And I wrote a novel and published it through Amazon, and which was cool. It was a cool experience. And for somebody like me who has a hard time like finishing things,
Yeah.
it was really cool to like have a finished copy of this thing in my hand, which was cool. But then I was a musician at that time, and I like kind of liked the more I said it, the more I was like, this is kind of cool. Maybe it'd be like a stage name, because my favorite band is AFI, and their lead singer has a stage name, and I always thought it was super cool. And I was like, hey, like this could be my stage name. This is sweet. So I decided that I would like transition that into being my stage name for music. And then it didn't like stick for a while. I just like, it was mainly in writing was my stage name, but I wasn't like comfortable using it as
Introducing
my name.
yourself as CT.
And so like it never, like every time we met new people, I was always like, hey, I'm Christian, what's up? And then I'd be like, that was my chance to change.
Now they know me as Christian.
And yeah, so but by the time I joined American Hotel System, that was like easier switch. I mean, they all like when I met them, they knew me as Christian, and I was still like phasing out of an old band, and I wasn't even an official member of American Hotel. I was just, it was a time in my life where I was like, maybe I could just be a musician for hire. And I hated that because there was no commitment. But shortly, like probably after being in the band for a year, I was just like, hey, I think I'd like this to be my stage name, and I'd like it to be like my musician name.
The thing.
Yeah. And so occasionally Jacob will call me Christian on stage, and it's not like a bad thing. I don't care. It's my name, and I like it. But it's become more of a thing where like in band situations, that's just like what I'm called. I do introduce myself as that a lot. But what has also helped that was my day job at AK Rikks. When I first officially was like giving my resume for that job, I decided that, hey, this would be a cool like professional setting to switch my name and just like
Go by CT.
Yeah, to me it sounded like more of a kind of a professional stylist thing. It sounded still professional, but also like, hey, this sounds like somebody who'd be a stylist and things like that. And so I decided to just put that on my resume instead of my full name. And so a lot of people now only know me as CT, like all my coworkers, all my clients, things like that. And then it's been a really interesting journey with like family and stuff, because given the nature of the world right now, where because for me it wasn't like a big identity thing. So given the nature of the world where there's so much identity searching, whether that's whether that's the LGBTQ, the trans conversation, or just people growing up trying to figure themselves out, like in all these different discussions, there's like identity is such an important thing.
Changing names.
And so
like,
people are changing names and pronouns and all that, and it's become like a sign of respect to ask people like, hey, what do you prefer I call you? So I have had a lot of friends of mine be like, hey, do you prefer that I call you CT? And like, I quickly am like,
I don't care.
it's not like that. Like, it's just like a nickname. It's not. And I think it's not that I want to distance myself from that. It's actually because I respect how hard those actual identity crisis and identity searching is, that I'm just like, no,
You're like, that's not what I'm going
like, this
through.
is
I'm
not
just,
like, there are people who actually are struggling with that stuff. And if you want to like spend time caring and respecting that stuff, like there are people who actually need that care and respect. I don't. Like, like you can call me whatever. Like I'll answer to hey you most of the time. So 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 that's
interesting.
kind of the journey. Some of my friends have like, they like it, so they've latched onto it, and like Jocko in the band, he calls me that quite a bit, which is fun. And then some other friends that I grew up with and things like that. But I answer to both. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know when. I think honestly in our email conversation with Jacob, it said CT. I'm like, who is CT? I was like, because I don't know. Like, I think I met you through Cole a while back and just knew of you and like knew who you were, and I knew your name was Christian. And I just, I think I missed that. And then it was just like, whoa,
I just see your Instagram handle. And I'm like, I know who CT is.
So I'm like not on Instagram much, obviously. So I see the email.
Who is that?
I got a letter in the mail and it said CT and I didn't know who it was from. CT McCallister sounds like an author.
Yeah.
I like it though.
Sounds like
I like
I
it.
did too.
Well, I did.
What's your middle name?
Tyler.
Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
I'm also not one of those people who's like, my middle name's a secret.
I know. I felt weird asking you because I was like,
if you remember those, like,
guess what's the first letter?
Yeah, that was like a big thing in school where
I know your middle name.
People were always like, you don't know my middle name. Like, your mom is on all the field trips. I'll find out.
That's funny.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, welcome CT to the show.
Yes.
Officially.
CT is a good friend of myself and Nate.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we go back a little bit.
We do.
Harris Coffee.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Harris Coffee Bar.
So I got connected to Harris through Bradley. Shout out to Bradley. Bradley.
Bradley Sinclair. Let's talk about that name for a second.
For real.
Like, dude is meant to be a superstar.
He is. He's on a cruise right now.
I know. Just like, I love all his Instagram stories where he's just like, just so you know, I'm still alive and on a boat.
Yeah. Like at the beach. He's like got sunglasses and like a bucket hat on.
He's just like, don't worry, I've just been tanning all day. It's like, what a life.
He's a goofball.
You look like you're really struggling, bro.
What a hard life. So we met through Brad and then we started working together at Harris Coffee. How did you get connected to Harris?
Well, so Sarah.
Yes.
Sarah Cardoza.
That's right.
She's awesome in Alaska right now.
Yeah.
Living it up.
Wasn't she at Deja Brew?
I worked with her at Deja Brew.
Yes.
So
you know
I worked with her at Deja Brew.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
After I did?
I don't know. So
I worked at Deja Brew right when it became Deja Brew.
Probably not.
So actually I left shortly after Sarah started.
Okay. Yeah. So I was this weird, like I lived in Grand Haven at the time, and I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to work at Deja Brew, because that's like, it was like
a 40-minute.
It was like a 55-minute drive.
Yeah.
And I was like, sure, why not? But no, I worked at Deja Brew, and I worked like every other Saturday. Because so Sarah and I met because we both worked for Click Espresso Catering. So Sarah and I, essentially what it was like we had a bunch of baristas from all over who would, the owner of Click, Steve, he would just like reach out to different baristas and be like, hey, I have an event, or we have a wedding, you want to work? And so Sarah and I worked an event together, and we worked a lot of events together. We were like two of the main go-tos for him. And so we worked a lot together, and she at one of those events was just talking about, like, we were chatting about life and stuff, and she was talking about how she needed help at Deja Brew, and I think she had just become the manager and like was like pretty fresh, and she said, I need some help, and I said, I don't know if it's helpful, but like I could work like every other Saturday or something. Like I know I don't live in the town, like in the city, but I could help out. And so she was like, yeah, that's great. And it wound up being the worst thing, not just for me. It was bad for her. Like I can't believe that she asked me to work at Harris after that experience. Like there was literally one day, because essentially the Saturday shift was like you open close by yourself. And so open was at like 6, and there was a day.
I think you told me this story,
and it was like, again, every other Saturday, not much commitment.
I'm excited to hear this because I used to open there, so I'm like, I totally feel this.
There was a day where, so essentially, in order to get there at 6 or whatever, I would have to leave at 5, so I'd have to get up at like 4:30. And I overslept. I woke up at 6 when I'm supposed to be there.
Oh.
And I was like, huh. So I called Sarah, and I was just like, I overslept. I just woke up. I can be there in an hour. Oh my God. And she said, she's like, I'm actually here. Don't bother coming in. Oh. And she had like just stopped by to drop something off or pick something up or something like that.
At 6 a.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then she was like, she just worked. And I felt so bad. It was awful. And I did not last long after that.
Dang.
It was rough. Rough go. I used to be really bad with time. Really, really bad with time. And anywho, yeah, she asked me to work at Harris.
Come to Harris.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Cole and I, we clicked like immediately. It was really cool because we had like a big like all staff training day.
I remember.
Or like we had a couple of them where we were like
we all came together.
We were like doing some painting.
Yes.
Like getting the shop to be ready.
I don't know what I thought about, like landscape oil painting instead of like
we were
wall painting.
We all had our canvases set up.
I was like, that's interesting. It was like a team building.
It was a team building meditation, painting, yoga.
Yeah, just transcendental meditation.
Understood.
Oil painting.
I forgot about that. I'm still tagged in someone's. Yeah. It might be Sarah's post. It might be Bree's post.
It's great.
It's so
I love it.
Yeah.
And so we did a couple days where we like went in and we were painting or like, doing something
random stuff,
random crap
prep,
and putting chairs together.
Yes,
like stuff like that. And then there was one day that we all got together and did like a training day where we all made lattes and made pour overs and all that kind of stuff. And that day that we did the training was also a day we did like a bunch of photos of like for the social media. So we like would make lattes and then they were taking pictures of the lattes.
Oh yeah.
But then the lattes wouldn't look good for very long. So we'd have to so we were like training, making lattes, and they were taking pictures, and it's a whole thing. Yeah, but we clicked right away. It was cool.
It was sweet.
It was cool.
Do you remember we did like a movie night at your place?
Yeah, I was doing a bunch of movie nights.
It was sweet.
Did we watch Princess Bride?
Yes,
Is that what we watched?
We did.
Because like Bree hadn't seen it.
Yep. Yes.
And like
that's
Bree,
right.
So a girl named Bree, she's awesome.
Yep.
She hadn't seen Princess Bride, and literally everyone else on staff was like, What? So we just like had pizza and watched Princess Bride.
It was sweet.
If nothing else, it just like brought a bunch of cool people together, and
it was cool community.
Yeah, that was how we met.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cool. It was a good time.
Kept in touch. I think I came over once and we just like jammed.
We just played guitar.
Yeah.
We
went over pedals because we both. Do you still have your Blues Junior?
Yeah.
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 We both had the like tweed Blues Junior, and
it was cool.
It was sick.
I actually just came across that picture where we took a picture of our guitars and our pedal boards and our amps.
Yes.
And I remember that was so you played. You were playing Neon.
Yeah.
Like over and over.
Yeah.
Because I kept telling him to keep playing it because I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, don't stop playing this. And I can play it now, by the way.
Amen.
I learned how to play it.
Yeah, dude. Yep.
So,
and then we just kept in touch. And then I think our most recent excursion was shooting for Festival of the Arts.
Yeah.
For you guys.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Which we're playing that again this year.
Yeah.
We're on the main stage.
Let's go.
So,
that's awesome.
Come on.
We're playing like I can't remember if it's Friday or Saturday, but we're playing at like 7.
That's sweet.
So it's like
there'll be people
it's
there.
such
then.
a good slot.
Prime
Yeah,
slot.
dude.
So
Yeah,
good.
that's
So
great.
That's amazing.
we're really, really thankful and excited for that. Yeah.
So changing topics a little bit.
Let's do it. Ready.
Nate, because Nate tracked and engineered with you guys here.
Yes.
And he was telling me about your journey into fashion and like AK
Yeah.
Rikks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was that? What that was like.
Yeah.
And he told me just a few little like nuggets of that, and I was like, that's super
Yeah,
cool.
I just told him we had like a really good conversation
Yeah.
about it. It was cool to hear kind of like, I don't know. It was just interesting. I never heard someone talk about that. I don't know a lot of people into like fashion in
I
that
don't
way
either.
either. So
Yeah,
it
same.
was fascinating to me.
Yeah. I'm just realizing I didn't wear stripes.
I know. We looked
we
at each
wa-
other. We're
I
like,
shoulda-
frick.
I
We wa-
should have wore stripes. I'm sorry.
Off the show.
That's not on brand, Christian.
Yeah, come on.
I need to do better. I apologize. Well, something on the subject of fashion. I actually was dressed by my wife today. Chloe, she's the best. It was really funny because I was picking out my clothes. I pick out my clothes the night before, and I was sitting in my closet, and I was like, I don't want to think about this because it was this can be a different discussion, but we just recently started trying to practice the Sabbath, and our friends that in our group, the Sinners Club discipleship group,
I love that.
when
sick.
they they were talking about how they practice Sabbath every week, and my friend Marty was just like, he's like, well, essentially what I do is anything that feels like work. If there's anything that comes to mind that I want to do, if it feels like work, I can't. And so that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Is like every time something came up, we were like, this kind of feels like work, or like let's put the dishes away. Well, wait a second. This feels like work. Can I wait until tomorrow? So I go into my closet and I'm thinking about clothes, and I'm kind of having this thought in my head. I'm like, this is what I do for a living, and I don't know if I want to pick clothes out. And it's like she read my mind because she came in there and she's like, oh, I think you should like wear this shirt, and like this would be good. Like you should just do this. This would be cool. And it was cool because she's like, well, you want to like represent the band brand, but maybe you wear something different than what you wear on stage. And so she like had this whole like branding identity that she was talking about, which was really cool because I was like,
You're like, I'm sold.
I was like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
exactly what I talk about. This is so cool. And then she's like, yeah, you should wear this shirt. And I was like, okay. And she's like, yeah, I'm a personal stylist, whatever.
Yeah.
What's your wife's name?
Chloe.
Chloe.
Yeah.
So is her middle name T as well? She's now CT.
No.
She
No,
stole
she's
your
not.
identity.
Her initials actually didn't change. She was Moreles before. That was my terrible accent, but yeah. But anywho,
That's awesome.
what's the question? Journey into fashion.
Yeah,
Got it. So it all started when I discovered, I mentioned my favorite band, AFI. So when I discovered them, my stepdad, I had gone to my mom and stepdad's house for the summer, and I had just started playing bass. That was like my first real instrument that I like really cared about. I mean, before that I played clarinet, but it wasn't like the same. But I started playing bass and was getting into music, and he handed me a stack of burned CDs and was like, hey, like here's some music that I've accumulated over time. You might like some of it. First CD on the top was burned, and it said AFI Sing the Sorrow, which was like their first mainstream album. And I popped it in, and like first second of this album, I was just like, this is like nothing I've ever heard. And it's amazing. So good. So that entire summer, I was like listening to this band on repeat and like YouTubing all their videos and watching all this stuff and looking up interviews and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And something I noticed is I loved the way they dressed, and I loved like every album they like would change their style musically, and then like their stage presence, stage attire, guitars, you know, all that stuff, the branding would change for that album cycle. And so like everything was cohesive and matched. So like their graphic design matched their clothing, and then their, you know, they had custom guitars to match their albums and like all that stuff. And that was like the first time I realized how clothing and fashion can connect with music, and like how it can be another avenue of representing what the band stands for, or the message of the album, or if nothing else, just like cohesive in color and things like that. And so that was like when I first started thinking about, man, I want to dress differently, because I just dressed like a Midwest kid who wore jeans and, you know, Abercrombie and Fitch t-shirts from Goodwill and, you know, whatever. And so I told my mom, because I was, at the time she lived in Arkansas, so I was there for the summer, and I was like, I want skinny jeans, like I want band t-shirts, like I want this stuff. And it was super cool. My mom, she's awesome, she's the best, and she, you know, a 13-year-old kid, and at the time it was, you know, skinny jeans weren't really a mainstream thing. So if you wanted to wear them, you had to get girl jeans. And so my mom, being so cool, she was, at the time, she was a manager at a women's clothing store. So she was just like, all right, let's go shopping. And so she brought me to that place, to her store, and had me try on stuff. And it was cool because she was like, I don't want you to look like you're trying to be a girl. You know, like, I don't want you to like look like you're trying to, you know, be somebody you're not, or things like that. But she's like, I know, I've seen the pictures that you like.
Yeah.
I've seen the stuff that you want to wear, and I think we can achieve it with this stuff. And
so your mom was a stylist for you.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
She brought me into the store, and she was like, try these jeans on. And it was really great because, you know, there were some that I put on that she, you know, like they clearly were meant to like shape a woman's body, and it just wasn't working for a 13-year-old boy, you know?
I don't know what you're talking about.
And so, yeah, so we like, you know, we did that, and then, you know, she brought me to the Hot Topic and like all those places, and we found me like different shirts and stuff and all that kind of cool stuff, and turned me into a little scene kid, and it was cool. And then she brought me to somewhere to like get my hair cut and dyed and like things like that, and it was a really great experience. And then, you know, after that, through high school, the fashion decisions I made could, you know, be a little iffy, but I stand by them. You know, I had a pair of hot pink, like fluorescent hot pink pants that were just dope. And it became a thing where like I wanted every color of brightly colored skinny jeans. So I had like a fluorescent yellow and like this red pair, and like it was crazy. People in school knew me like I was like famous, if you can be famous in school, but they were like, that's the pink pants guy. And
That'll do it for sure.
yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was
Oh, yeah.
it was intense. And I think one of the coolest things about the way I dressed in school was my teachers loved it. They thought it was so cool. They always like would tell me like, yeah, it's so cool that you just dress how you want to dress, you know, like you just do your thing, and it's really cool. And I have some great relationships with teachers I had in high school, and now like I can say like, yeah, I work in fashion now, and they're like, of course you do, you know, like, but it wasn't until like after high school that I kind of, because obviously through high school tried to develop my style to like represent who I was as a person, um and of course when you're in high school you have no idea who you are as a
Mhm.
person. And so, and I still struggle with this today, but a lot of what I did in school was like um trying to be the idols that I had, like
Mm.
trying to be Davey Havoc from AFI, or trying to be for a while it was Austin Carlisle from Of Mice and Men, and just trying to be these people that I thought were really cool and had it figured out. And um but it wasn't until after high school that I started realizing like this, because I started a band called Eye Candy, and I like realized how what you wear on stage can like set you apart. And all those things I discovered when I was first discovering my favorite band. I discovered like, oh, this really mean like it does something different,
Yeah.
because I started seeing all these, we
Your
started
stage
playing,
presence has
we started
changed.
playing shows, and we started seeing these other bands, and you could just tell like some people don't care what they look like when they get up there, and then
It
and
impacts how you
yeah,
listen to their music
it
too.
impacts how you perceive them. And I say this all the time, and it's terrible, but people within like a second of seeing you, like a couple seconds, they have a judgment of who you are based on what you look like.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing with when you're watching a band, like, when they're setting up, they haven't even played a note. When they're setting up, you size them up. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, they look pretty grungy. This is gonna be like a Nirvana wannabe band or whatever. Then they start singing, and it's like country, and it's like, country pop or what. Like you just,
Right.
um, and so it was very important for me, in Eye Candy, that we had an image, um,
Mm.
and one of the mistakes of that band though was there was just like I cared a lot more about like our image and what we looked like and how we appeared. And we didn't like I personally didn't do enough work on like the back end of stuff, like on actually making us successful.
Mm.
It was just like, oh, we're gonna go to H&M, and we're gonna buy outfits for everybody, and we're gonna look dope, and it's gonna be great. And it just didn't pan out. But um 2020 was actually really nice for me, because um coming out of the shutdown is when I like um I got married, and um we like I moved from Grand Rapids out to Spring Lake, and started working at a coffee shop out there because I just needed a quick job when we moved. And after being there for a couple months, I through a series of events, I realized like, you know what, I need a job that can give me benefits, that can give me health insurance, give my wife health insurance, all the big boy stuff. I need something that can do that. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, because the only thing I'd ever really done, I worked in salons for a little bit as like a receptionist, but the only thing I'd ever really done was play music and make coffee. And so at that point, I was just like, I have no idea what to do. So I was looking on Indeed and things like that, and just applying for the most random stuff, and just seeing what I could get. Cause I also didn't go to college, so I don't have any like formal education. So no idea what I was going to do. And then I wound up getting an interview. My cousin worked at Men's Warehouse, and so he was like, "Hey, like we need help." And so I wound up, I was like, "Yeah, I like dressing nice. Like I could do this." And so I got an interview, and got the job. And so I worked there for a while, and through working there is kind of when I realized how much I enjoyed like helping people.
Mm.
In general, helping people, but just this idea that like helping somebody feel confident, or like helping somebody build their brand, or
Help them wear
you
clothes that
know,
fit right and stuff
yeah,
too.
like making them feel good, look good. And just like overall, it's really Like I'm very relational. I love relationships, and I think there's something really cool about a relationship where, I mean, if we want to get biblical about it, it's the iron sharpens iron thing.
Hmm.
It's like, just as much as a friendship where like, just you being friends, you help each other and you call each other out and you help each other grow. It's the same kind of feeling where it's like, you know, building a relationship with a client is like that, because it's like, I'm here to help you become like the best version of yourself. And I know clothes are just clothes at the end of the day, but I really enjoyed this idea of like, putting you in the right outfit that makes you feel the right way can change your life and like change the way people perceive you and change the way you perceive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think about something I do when I'm getting up and like getting my clothes and things like that is I think about, character, like my character for the day and like how I want to feel and what do I want to present. And that's what I like to think about for people as well. And I discovered all this through working at Men's Warehouse. It was great. But then I got to the point where I was like, I kind of hate retail a lot. And I was like, these hours suck. And, I don't really want to do that. Now, nothing against Men's Warehouse, because it was a fantastic place to work. But for me, I just was like, I want something that's better, because I was getting, I was working shifts that were the opposite of Chloe's shifts, and so we weren't really seeing each
Open
other as much
later.
as I wanted.
Yeah.
And so, because she works at a coffee shop, she's a
Mm.
manager, and so, so she was typically doing like earlier mornings, and it just wasn't matching up well, and so we, I started thinking about like maybe I do this freelance, like maybe I just become a stylist on my own and just do this thing. Which would be really great if I lived in like LA or New York. Like
Mhm.
that's doable.
There's a lot more need for that.
Yeah. And West Michigan is not necessarily an area where some people don't even know what it is. Like the amount of times I tell somebody I'm a personal stylist and they're like, "Oh man, I could use a haircut." I'm just like, "No.
That ain't it.
I'm not going to do
Yeah,
that."
that's the language
but
that
it's
people are used to.
it's like a thing that people just don't know.
Yeah.
And so, I had discovered AK Rikks through an event, and I had followed some of the people on social media, and so I was just like, hey, I reached out to a couple guys from there, and I said, hey, I'm looking to get into this, start this. I was wondering if I could just if we could have a call sometime, and I could just pick your brain about the industry. And so I talked to a guy named Jordan, who I work with now. And we talked for like an hour. I kind of told him how I was feeling and where I was at and what I wanted to do. And we had a great conversation. And after we talked, at the end of the phone call, he's like, hey, like, I like, you remind me a lot of how I sounded 8 years ago before I started working at AK Rikks. And he said, I think that something that you would not have if you did this on your own is like an engine to run your business. You just wouldn't have that vital part. You'd have to build from the ground up, and it'd be a really long process,
Mhm.
especially in West Michigan. He said, but I think you should just work here at AK Rikks. He's like, you'll do what you want to do, but the engine will be here.
You don't have the overhead.
You don't have to worry about any of that stuff because it's already taken care of. And so I applied and interviewed like 5 times. It was a very, very grueling process, and got into it. And so that's kind of how I got into working in fashion. But it has bled into the band, and somewhere along the line, I couldn't tell you when exactly, but somewhere along the line, Jacob started asking like, hey, like, how's this outfit look? you know, because he's always cared about like how we look on stage, and
Mhm.
because when I first joined the band, I don't know how long you've followed us, but when I first joined the band, we were like uniform, like name tags, like bellhops at a hotel.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember
And
seeing
so
pictures.
Yeah.
he's always really cared about what we look like on stage. And then um, somewhere along the line, we kind of like shifted how we wanted to dress on stage, and so we were doing this, and like there was a time where it was like we're gonna do all black, and then there's a time where when around the time when we started releasing songs from Interrobang, we like each band member had a color, and so there was like a summer where every show that summer we all just had a color. It was you shot us at Festival of the Arts that summer.
Yes. Yeah.
So like I was orange, I think Jacob was red, and so we were all like wearing outfits that accented those colors. Um, and so we played around with that, but it's gotten to the point where like, you know, we wanted everybody to have like their own vibe, but at the same time like mesh together. And so, um, yeah, so that's been really fun getting to develop that, and like, uh, for me, it's a really fun thing in my brain to like make it branding, but also make it personal for everybody. And
Well, it sounds like something I think a lot of us, I mean, all of us, hopefully, want to like wake up and do something that we enjoy.
yeah,
And it sounds like you found a lot of areas to just simply do what you like doing, you know, and figured out a way to like pay the bills and like stimulate that creative part of you that like wants to, you know, that wants to yeah, like figure out the puzzle or like the style of everything and create the image. Like for us with this podcast, even like we just started doing it because we like doing it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like, okay, we like it. And so it seems like even with the band, like you just like doing it. So like the fact that you get to do it doesn't feel like
yeah,
work with the band. You're just like, oh, I would like, yeah, that sounds great. Like I'd love to handle that. And
Yeah.
maybe that's also like you would rather handle it than let someone else handle it.
yeah. I mean, it's cool. Like, I mean, it's very, very in our like it's in our DNA as a band to like do everything ourselves.
You guys have like kind of split roles, right? Like I've noticed that a little bit where like it might even be unofficial, but more like, oh, they're the person that kind of like heads that up. Like,
Yeah, I mean, we for a long time there was a lot of unspoken stuff, you know, like you know, I mean, Jacob's very hands-on, and this is definitely his baby, and you know, if he's not in it, there's no American hotel system.
Mhm.
So for him there's a lot of ownership here, and so he does a lot of the business side of things because he just from the very beginning, like that's what he did because he wanted it to be successful, and so he does a lot of that side of things.
Mhm.
He also does our graphic design, um, and he does majority of the lyrics. And when I say majority, I mean there's maybe like one or two sentences combined between the four of us besides him that he didn't write. Uh, so majority, like super majority. Um, but then like Samuel is definitely a gearhead,
Yeah.
and so for even unspoken before we've really talked, I mean he has always like been the guy that's like helping us find the best pedals, and
Mhm.
and he's really good at what I do with clothes, he does with gear. It's really cool. It's like when Jacob was searching for a new board, like Samuel's like found the one, and he's like, I think this would be great for you and how you play, and we can set your song so you don't have to touch anything. You just switch the song, like, and just like set it all up.
Yeah.
And for me, he was like, I think you need like this overdrive pedal, and this would be a great upgrade. Like, and he's very much like styling our pedal boards. It's
Yeah.
like pretty cool.
I noticed that when I
Um,
was engineering you guys, like he
yeah.
was kind of like
Yeah.
the gear guy.
Yeah. He's definitely that. Jocko is he really leans into the logistics, and it's really cool. We all fall into place.
Yeah.
And we've tried to make it more out there where we're like, this is what we do. So especially with Jocko being like a logistical guy, one of the things that we flat out said was like, hey, like, how about you kind of head up the stage plot and like communicate with the sound guy. And so like when we get to a venue, Jocko goes and he does that and he takes care of that and like gets them our stage plot and asks if they need anything from us and kind of tells all that stuff. Because he already does that.
That's great.
So yeah, it is cool. We all kind of fall into our place and
So I'm kind of like, I feel like I used to care more about my image than I do today. And I think that was part of the conversation we had. I was like, that's so interesting because like I've maybe just gotten addicted to not like having to think about what I throw in the morning because I have like all neutral colors and like whatever I just grab is just like usually just black or like whatever. And I just throw it on. And that's like a decision I don't have to make. But it was interesting to hear like almost the opposite where you're like
intentional.
And I'm so unintentional about it. I just want to be comfortable, and it's come to me more like functional and comfortable. And like, I want to look good. Like I don't think I dress unstylistically, but it's definitely much more based on like I want to be able to like go out if I was going to go play a show and then go out and like rake the leaves and like work in my yard in the same clothes. Like I don't want to go change.
The same breath.
I mean, there's a lot of like I have clients that I work with that like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Where they're just like they care enough to where they're like I want something nice, and I want to this is my lifestyle and I want to look good, but I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
Like they're like I want all my stuff to match, and I want it all to. Like I just want to grab anything, like in the dark, eyes closed. I just want to grab it and I want it to work, and but that's fine. And I said the word image earlier, and you just said it just now. Something that I've struggled with, I still struggle with. It's definitely a thing. Is image. Like there was a time, I think it was in maybe 2017, 2018, something like that, where I shaved my head because I like had become very vain about my hair. And I like, it sounds silly, but I just like, I had noticed how like I cared,
You're always like
I
looking
cared
at it
so much about my image. And it just was like, it just became this big thing. And so I had to shave it off. And like another thing with fashion, with clothing is I still struggle with it occasionally. And it's definitely like based in insecurity, but, prior to the last couple of years, I've really, really struggled with like thinking more about my image and what other people perceive and like the person that I want people to see instead of like who I actually am. Instead of like, because I think what's beautiful about fashion and style and clothing is like you can wear clothes that like represent who you are. It's amazing. Like you can wear stuff that represents who you are and the life you live, and it can be a very honest expression.
They like work alongside of what you're doing.
Like it can be very honest expression of who you are.
Yeah.
But it can also be
a facade,
a very like deep facade of like a person that you want people to think you are. And for the longest time, I was trying so hard to like be somebody else and like look like somebody else. And occasionally there are still those days where I'm like I put
Catch
something
yourself.
on and I'm like, this is like not who I am. And so that's definitely a journey, is like, image. And something that it brings to mind is like, there is an image that we're supposed to present to the world, because we're image bearers, and that image is not somebody else, but it's the creator. Like that's who people are supposed to see. If they see anything, that's who they should see when they look at us. And, one thing that a friend of mine has said so often that I'm really trying to hone in on, because hot button topic. I have until this year, the 2 or 3 years prior to this year, were like a major deconstructing period for me, and just like hating a lot of things about Christianity and the world, and like American culture, like church culture and all that stuff. So I deconstructed heavily, and I've been rebuilding now. And in this group, like one of the things that my friend has said that I absolutely love is, he said, he talks about his confidence and things like that. And he says, the thing that I remember is who I am and whose I am. And he said that makes it easy. It's like I can be confident wherever I'm at in my life, wherever I am in my journey, because I know who I am and whose I am. And I've been really trying to hone in on that, and let my just be and exist in those statements.
Yeah.
And then let everything else flow out of that. So
That's so good. And yeah, I knew we were going to get here because this was part of our past conversation. But one thing that I noticed now is in your conversation, we talk a lot about Sabbath and rest, but how those two things kind of go together. How hard it is to Sabbath when you don't trust in whose you are and who you are.
Yeah.
Because it's like we put this pressure on ourselves, like whether it's how I make an image that somebody else perceives, or the way I play guitar, whatever I do that I perform and I earn my status or my identity, that culminates in that. When Sabbath is just like a rejection of that, where you're like, I'm not going to do anything today. I'm not going to be useful. I'm not going to be like, something that would gain anything in the eyes of the world. I'm going to trust in my Heavenly Father, who says that this is good for me and that it's a blessed day and all those other things. So like, I'm making that connection now as I hear that, like, those two things aren't separated. And that's why, like, even Sabbath, that impacts how we go the rest of the 6 days, right? Like the way that you view yourself in the morning, like, you know what? I know whose I am and who I am.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter really what I do. It matters, but it doesn't matter what jacket I put on. Ultimately, like, I just want to do what I like. And then the pressure is relieved, right?
Yeah.
To style your hair a certain way, or like do those things. Not that you can't if you enjoy it, but to gain a certain like image.
If it's about like gaining,
right.
If it's about gaining anything, it's not worth it.
No.
Yeah.
But for the love of like enjoying what God, like the goodness of fashion, right?
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people think that like, I don't know. I feel like you get probably extremes on both sides most of the time. I don't feel like there's probably generally a very balanced view on like image or fashion. You get people that are like, oh, you shouldn't care at all what you look like.
Yeah.
Like really, like people go, oh, like it doesn't matter what someone looks like. You shouldn't like. That's just dishonest to how humans are wired. Like we are wired to make snap judgments on how people present themselves, and it's for a lot of reasons. That I think people are being naive if they say that that's not true. But on the other hand, like sometimes, again, it can get obsessive.
I think it's super interesting how, like, because you're in fashion, that's more of like a conscious thing that you tangibly think about versus other people in terms of like someone's self-image and how they present themselves. Like, yes, like people care about fashion, but not to the same degree as if you're in the industry, where like you're saying, like your work created this avenue for deconstruction, like at the forefront. Because I think, like we already said, like everyone kind of struggles with that image and the facade, but to be in an industry where that is almost at the forefront of like all the work that you do is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Where it's not a subconscious thing that you think about. And I'm the same way. Like we're both like all my jeans are black. Like I just like wear a lot of black because I know it works. And I also don't want to have to think about it in the morning.
And I like how it looks too. Like,
exactly.
I mean, it's also that. I just at one point just decided I liked how it looks, and now
and just roll with it. But it also made me think. I heard this sermon. I think I was visiting a church somewhere, but talked about there's a verse in Colossians that's, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And the message was like thinking about that verse as you're getting dressed, like
Yeah.
in the morning. It was just like a cool connection that I just made like right now.
Yeah.
But like it is like deconstructing and journeying through that in the area of fashion, I think is really cool because everyone journeys through that in different ways.
Yeah.
But as fashion as like the avenue of that deconstruction. And then like we were just saying, like thinking about what image as image bearers, like what are we presenting to the world,
Yeah.
you know, with like wanting to dress in excellence or something that speaks to God's character more than building ourselves up,
Yeah.
you know?
Or be known for that.
Right.
Yeah. It's been an interesting journey. Well, so I remember I was speaking with a pastor that I know prior to starting this job, and tell him about what I was going to do. And obviously it's luxury clothing. It's expensive. It's, and I remember him saying like, how can you do that? Like, how are you going to be able to do that? Like, everyone who comes into that store is going to be spending like ridiculous amounts of money on clothes. How are you going to be able to do that? And my answer, like, it might not be the most biblical answer. It might not, like, whatever, but my answer was just like, they're going to buy it anyway. Whether I work there or not, they're just going to go buy it anyway. So like me working there versus me not working there is not going to change the fact that they're doing it. And the thing is me working there, for one, is a chance for me to have a successful career, take care of myself, take care of my family, which gives me more opportunity to put my money, to steward my money well and put it where it needs to go, tithe, like all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so let's say, I mean, I don't think it's terribly sinful, but let's say that these people who are buying expensive clothes, are like, far from God. It's like, wouldn't it be smart to put somebody who knows God in their way?
Oh, yeah.
In
Yeah, they
their
don't
path?
need God. They don't need a witness.
It's like, let's get somebody in there who can be a light, who can be kind, who can show
Yep.
them, compassion and things like that. It's like,
Yeah.
I think where the issue lies is, I think the preachers and sneakers thing, like, really kind of opened people's eyes to like a bigger conversation, because I think it does lead back to image. It leads back to like the, what are we showing the world, and are we representing who we need to represent, things like that. I think that's the bigger issue is like, okay, why are you wearing these things?
Well,
And
what's the motive behind?
what's your motive? Like, that's really where it lies for me, because I'm like,
yeah.
because I definitely could be on the preachers and sneakers page,
Yeah.
because I wear expensive clothes because I get them from my job. Now, I wouldn't shop there if I didn't work there, but I, I have clothes that people would be like, bro, that's crazy. And like, I would be on there. But the thing is you have to like really evaluate a person's heart. And like, that's where the discussion lies, is like,
Well,
where's this person's heart? in it,
You brought a lot of interesting concepts when you talked to us last time, like where one, like how people perceive people with money to begin with,
Yeah.
like as like the Disney villain. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yep.
everybody who can afford expensive clothes is probably selfish and abused people to get
Yeah.
there, and
And
like
greedy. And, yeah.
not provided any
Yeah.
value to other people. Like,
Yeah.
because really when when it boils down to like money is it's the root of all kinds of evil. First of all, like I'm not trying to say that it's not, because we're all greedy.
Yeah.
But you can be just as slave to money with 10 cents in your bank account as you can with $10
Yeah.
million in your bank account.
True.
It's has less to do with the amount of money you have and more the way that you view money. And I thought you made a really interesting point. You were like, yeah, like people look at somebody with money as the Disney villain, where like I'm curious, your experience with like your clientele, like what have you experienced with the people coming there to shop? Have you seen them as materialistic? Have you not seen them as materialistic? Maybe both. It probably just depends.
Yeah.
Um, and like, or like, I guess, what is your perception of that? Because you had a really interesting perspective on that too. Even you telling me your personal journey to like where people would look at you and make judgments on you based on what you're wearing, and you're like, you have no idea that I just work at this place,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, so I think that one thing that I try to do is, anybody I serve that's coming through the door, like I'm going to treat them. I want to treat them the same. Like that's my goal, is to treat everybody the same. Um, because you don't have any idea who's coming in, and this is the way it is anywhere, is like if you meet somebody on the street and you have a quick conversation, and you see this person on the street and they're like, in grubby gym clothes, super sweaty, and they're like, yeah, I'm just out for my run, whatever, and they go on their way, like you have no idea that person could be like the CEO of some company that's like $1 million company,
Right.
like what, like you have no idea who
Right.
this person is or like anything. And so the idea is that we, we're looking, like I treat people the same because, for one, I want to make money obviously at my job. So like if somebody comes in, like I have no idea their story. So it's like, I'm going to treat them the same because from a selling standpoint, they could have tons of money and be ready to spend. And if you assume that they don't just because they look grubby, it can change things. But
It's not the pretty woman, like
yeah,
the
it's exactly
thing from Pretty Woman.
Yeah, just like Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
And so I have experienced like the people, because I've gotten to go to some great events, some cool galas and things like that, where I've gotten to rub shoulders with a lot of amazing people and a lot of people that it's crazy that I get to experience, meet all these people and experience it. But something I've discovered is, most of the time, people who have a lot of money, you would never know. At least like here. I mean, it might be different in other places, but at least here, like, there is no like, there's no attitude there, there's nothing like that. It's like typically, it's more likely that somebody who says that they have a lot of money or says they're,
Doesn't.
they don't
Mhm.
actually, they're just trying to put on, it's an image thing. They're just trying to put this image out there that says like, yeah, I have this. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing I've discovered being in this industry is like, money is it's just numbers on a screen, honestly. Like, now it is different
Mhm.
because the numbers on my screen don't get me the same opportunities that, Kanye has, right? But the thing is the place that he's at monetarily, he gets experiences, and the place that I'm at monetarily, I get experiences. Now the thing is my experience of going out to Applebee's is the same experience for him, except going to like a 4-star restaurant and you're dropping like $1,000 on a dinner. Like for me, going to pay $20 for dinner isn't like a huge loss. Same thing for him if he's going and dropping $1,000 on a dinner, not a huge loss. Now, from my perspective, that's a lot of money.
What could I do with that? Yeah.
But from his perspective, it's like going to Applebee's for $20, right? So to me,
It's all relative.
yeah, it's all relative. We're all people. And, some of us just have more numbers on the screen. But in reality, like, people are just people,
And I think a lot of times, like, we all want to be successful, right? Like,
Yeah.
we all want to perceive ourselves as successful. We all want to achieve things, especially in like our circles, I feel like, right? Like
Yeah.
high achieving, entrepreneurial, like go-getters, whatever that is. one, again, Sabbath is antithesis to that, which is like so powerful. Again, it's kind of been a theme. We've been talking about it a lot in the last few episodes. It just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
I wonder why. But even in terms of like being slave to money, that's something that like it's so easy to lose sight of, right? Where you said like like we're on this journey. It's not like you've like conquered all of these things that you've gone through, but you're in a different place, a better place, presumably. But like every day we have to remind ourselves like this, of the same elementary things about like whose we are, who we belong to, who we are.
Where's our identity?
Yeah. And like, I mean, it's a biblical concept of contentment, right? I think contentment is the biggest thing. Like you can be content and happy, have everything you need, and not have any savings.
Yeah.
And live a more joyous life than somebody who decided that their career was more important than their family. Decided that they're going to make sacrifices for the number on the screen. And that's why you see all these famous rich people blowing the brains out, because they realize they made sacrifices that they can never,
and they're not fulfilled by
they're like, it's
stuff.
just one more dollar, right? It's just like, oh, I just want one more. So I mean, of course, like lifestyle is a thing. Like again, the reality is when you have more money, you can live a certain lifestyle. And if for you momentary happiness is equal to a certain lifestyle, then you need to take that into account. But I guess I would posit that a lot of us, even the perceptions of lifestyles that we want to live, aren't actually based in the reality of what it actually looks like to live that reality. For instance, what does it look like to be a famous guitar player? Like, what does the day-to-day look like of that? A lot of people want the image of being a famous guitar player, but they don't want the day-to-day life, which means practicing 3 hours a day, which means being on tour half the year, which means like all these things that they're like, that guy his life's so easy because he can go to any restaurant and pay whatever amount. But it's like, or like a marathon runner, you realize that they wake up early and run 16 miles. Do you want to do that? Do you like, what do you want to spend your time doing every day? Because time is more valuable than money.
Yeah, I just saw a quote from Usain Bolt where he was like, I trained for 4 years to run 9 seconds. And people will train for something for 2 months and give up because they don't see results. And it was just like that blew my mind. I was just like, that's crazy to think about, because when you put it from his perspective, he really like ran 9 seconds, but it took years, Something I was going to say is I think I've seen, because I worked in ministry growing up, and I was on staff as a worship leader for a time, and and then given the industry I'm in now and music and all this stuff, like through my whole life, I've seen people who have a lot of money and who have nothing be very content and feel successful and feel like, life is good, right? But I've also seen people who have a lot of money and who have nothing be, not that way, and feel very lost and feel like, life just sucks and has no meaning and all that kind of stuff. So I've seen both perspectives from both like monetary places. And so again, it's just like, it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with like how you perceive money and how important it is to who you are. Because if you're basing your monetary success, like if that's where your identity is, it's not gonna, like, that's not gonna last. And again, it just comes back to like, whose are you? Like who is your, who's the fuel?
I was gonna say, like, I'm reminded of, I don't know if you've seen these, but it's the videos of these like seemingly like high school kids, and they're all like decked out in like Louis and like Gucci stuff, and it's all like they all go through their outfits and like say how much like each piece is like worth, and it's like $400 Gucci shirt, like $800 Louis whatever like bag, and just that culture of that's put on people that aren't rooted.
Social media is
exactly like that. The whole media around on all fronts, all places that you can get media, of like you have this stuff and you are quote unquote like making it or like doing it or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's these kids that have like a $5,000 like outfit on.
Yeah.
And that's like what their like joy and like happiness is in. And it was just like, oh, like it kind of hits you in the stomach and you're like,
it's hard to
"Man."
look at.
Yeah.
Well, like, you know, those kids still like, I don't know, like a good friend. Like, what does it take to have a good friend or like community or like a relationship like that? Like, that's where like, you know, like the joys of life come into play. Where and somebody who doesn't love you for your money, and it is money just complicates everything to begin with. Like more money, more problems is definitely a thing. But I look at that and I almost have like compassion because I'm like, they probably don't know if any of their friends actually like them.
Right.
Like,
They're so deceived.
Yeah. Or like, you know, like I think of Justin Bieber and I'm like, I would, you know, a lot of people like idolize his position and of course he's very prosperous.
Yeah.
But, you know, like you see a song like Lonely come out.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, as a musician, I'm like listening to that. I'm like, dude, I'm praying for you, dude.
Yeah.
Because like I can only imagine what it's like to not be able to go in public because people don't treat you like a human.
Well, I saw him when he was at Van Andel.
So did I.
So good.
Yeah.
But when he did that song, I was like my heart broke.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I loved about that show was how much like that beginning video where it was all like it was about God and he like
preached the gospel.
Yeah, it was
and like
dope.
people, you could tell that people didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird.
It was really cool because there was definitely like this feeling in the room where like tons of people were like, this is dope. But then there was also this feeling where like, this is dope. And there are some people in here who really don't like it.
Really upset about it.
There are like people who are really uncomfortable right now.
Dang.
They were like there's some people who are like, just sing. Or like I heard someone say something like that. I was like,
but I was like, you know what? Like, sweet. Because something I was thinking about is this was right after the Will Smith slap at the Oscars, and Jaden Smith was supporting Justin. And so there was like a lot of stuff going on with the Smith family and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what's dope? I was like, forget everybody in this room and think about the fact that Jaden Smith is on tour with Justin right now. And like, there is a chance that Justin could be like preaching the gospel to somebody who really needs it on a daily basis. Like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Like he didn't like water it down. Like it was probably 10 minutes of him walking through like Jesus died and was resurrected and like on the third day and like how it's like it was the gospel.
It was sick.
I was convicted because like would I have the courage to do that in his position? Like knowing how many people hate God that are at that show.
Yeah.
Like,
and I would say
it was impactful.
I think there are definitely people out there who hate God. I think that's true. I think majority of the people though hate Christians. Which like,
well, yeah, because their idea of
sucks.
God is through Christians.
Right.
Yeah.
It's through people.
Yeah. And I say this to anyone listening, and I try to remind myself of this all the time, but like, this is one of the reasons why. So oftentimes when people deconstruct, they don't come back. They lose their faith. You know, they backslide. But they lose their faith because everything their faith is built on is man-made. And so when they deconstruct that, there's nothing left because everything they know about God, the image that they have of God is man-made. And I feel super lucky because one thing that I've never, ever doubted, and this, I've had experiences, one in particular, but I've had experiences where like it's undeniably God. And so like through my process, the one thing that I could never not believe in is the fact that God's real and that Jesus saved me. And I just like, I can't not believe that because of experiences where like there's a specific experience where God hugged me. Like, no joke. I was in a room with someone else and I had my eyes closed and I felt somebody hug me and I opened my eyes and the person who was in the room was still across the table from me. and I swear that somebody hugged me, and I know it was God, and I know that like that's real, right? So that's the one thing I could never not believe in. So in my process, I deconstructed a ton of stuff, and it was all man-made, and all that was left was God's real and Jesus saved me, and I can build on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the firm foundation.
But the
Yeah.
big reminder of all of that, like through this whole process, the big reminder is like Christians suck at representing God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's wise for us to realize that and not judge God based on the mistakes of Christians.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like that's why we believe in God to begin with, is
Yeah.
because we suck, right? Like I think that's something we easily forget. It's like we get on our high horses, you know, and we like to look at people as less than or other because they're not living a certain way. Whereas like Jesus looked at people with compassion.
Yeah.
You know, like he never the one with the power to judge, with the authority to judge, with the if anyone could judge, it was Jesus.
Yeah.
When people come, it's just so impactful to me when like I'm reading the Gospels and I see like Jesus like had compassion, or like he had mercy on them, and it's like you know that like he was overcome with love for the person he was looking at, not based on their performance. And then you like read, you look at the whole biblical narrative and you realize like, yeah, I'm in all of these scenarios, I like to put myself as the hero. Really, I'm like, I should be putting myself in with like the Pharisees who crucified Jesus.
Yeah.
I should be putting myself with like the character I should be identifying with is the one that was in the wrong and not the one in the right. We like to be the hero of the story.
Well, because it's like because we can be grateful to be on this side of the cross instead of, because if we were on the other side of the cross, like I'd be a Pharisee for sure.
Yeah.
You know?
So I'm totally with you. Like, I think that, you know, I think that part of it is the sin of culture and like the devil deceiving culture and turning, like, I think that the devil would maybe take advantage of an opportunity to say, yeah, look at those sinful Christians, those bigots, those hypocrites. How could God be real? I think that's the devil deceiving.
Yeah.
But like, then you look at the call to, being a witness and being known by your love, and of course, what does that look like? But I think that gets lost on us, and we get so tied up with like that whole, like the whole debate versus the whole like living like a Christian and loving people like a Christian, because there's no denying that God is real when you have like people around you that it does not make sense how they forgive you. It does not make sense how they love you. It doesn't make sense how they look at you like that because, right, like we're the debtor who's been forgiven many debts, who turns to our other like slave debt person who owes us money, and then we're like, I'm gonna put you in debtor's prison, right? Because like you owed me this and you sinned against me. We're so quick to do that when we've like sinned against God. And I totally did.
I also think it's cool and really healthy to have a deconstruction, because I think God welcomes that, like in a weird way.
He can handle it.
He can handle it, like as well as like that's life, is like wrestling with God on things. You know, like all of culture says like be your own God, essentially, like have this success and like go out and do it for yourself. But like we're supposed to like question and wrestle and like figure this stuff out like for ourselves, because I think it becomes truer to us. Like it solidifies that like more in our heart. So for anyone else who's like doubting or wrestling with stuff, like know that that's like an okay place to be. Like that's not a bad.
You're not weird.
You're not weird. Like you're actually in the norm. You know?
I mean, a big thing for me is like I relate a lot with Thomas. And I don't like to call him Doubting Thomas, because he's definitely more than just a person who doubts. Like, he's one of the first Christians ever. Like, I'm just like, don't degrade him by calling him Doubting Thomas. He's Thomas, and he had doubts, and that's cool.
We label and compartmentalize.
Was it a description to differentiate him from a different Thomas? I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I'm not sure, but I'm with you. The perception is not that.
I'm just like, Thomas had doubts, and it's cool, but you know,
I'm not doubting Thomas, by the way. No, it's like, that's exactly it. We look at that.
Yeah, but
like,
the thing is like, I'm fine with relating with that, because the thing that I point out is like, he he had doubts, but his doubts, he brought his questions to the right person,
And they were answered.
and they were answered, and like he didn't. So typically in our culture, what happens is if somebody who is a Christian starts having doubts and they're like, oh man, I don't know about Christians and I don't know about God and I don't know if anything is real. Typically, they go to somebody who does not believe in it. And they're like, hey, I'm having doubts. Like, isn't this crazy? And then that person's like, yeah, that's all crap. And then, and they go to the wrong person with these questions.
Hmm.
For example, like in my marriage, if I have like a doubt in my mind about something that my wife said or is going to do or does or whatever, I should just go to her and be like, hey, let's talk about this thing, right? Because that's the thing is like, if you have a doubt of someone, you should just go to that someone and be like, hey, can you reassure me?
Go to the source.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
It's very wise.
here's the thing. If I have a doubt in my wife and I go to somebody else, what they're going to do is they're going to draw from their own experience and they're going to give me advice based on their own experience, which could be good or could be terrible because I don't know what their experience is, right?
Yep.
And typically when we're in a bad place, we like to go to people who've been in that bad place because they can relate. Because typically when we're in those situations, we don't want somebody who can help. We want somebody who can relate.
Right. Or just confirm how you're feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
sometimes
then-
like Christians can like gaslight people who are doubting to like feel like they're crazy. It's like I think I think that like a lot of us do have bad experience where like you are doubting something and you talk to someone and they make you feel stupid for a question you have, or like I don't want to feel that. I want to go to somebody who will reaffirm me.
Yeah.
And that's probably partly our own fault and partly thinking of like, how do I respond to people who ask questions that seem silly in my brain?
Yeah.
Or like, do I actually have compassion like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think we move past, like once we have that figured out, we're like, how, like we forget that we once had those thoughts and questions too.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me because, you look at Thomas and, obviously Jesus appears to the disciples before Thomas, like when Thomas isn't there. And they have this experience. And then the disciples go to Thomas and they're like, bro, he's alive. Like he appeared. It's super cool. And then Thomas is like, no. And not only does he say like, no, I'm not going to believe it, but he's like, I'm not going to believe it until I put my fingers in the holes in his hands and the holes in his side and like see the whites of his eyes and like feel his breath. Like, just like this whole thing. He's like, I'm not going to believe it until I know for sure that this is real. And I think the cool thing that happens is when Jesus does appear, he appears like in a very similar way that he appeared to the other disciples. And it's like this thing where Jesus is like, not only is he coming and giving Thomas exactly what he needs to believe, but he also is doing it in the same, like a very similar way so that the disciples can all have this experience, which is really cool. That like all the disciples get to have this similar experience of like him appearing in a place
it was
that's
compassionate.
crazy. And
Jesus appearing to like them was compassionate. He didn't
it's so
need to,
cool.
but he did.
Yeah.
Right.
And then another thing about that blows my mind is he says to Thomas, he shows him himself and he lets him have this opportunity to touch the wounds and be there. And then he says, stop being faithless. Like your belief is going to make other people believe in the truth. So like believe because it's true. And the fact that you believe will make other people believe. And that was like a big thing for me because this was part of the Easter message at a church I visited. And it was a big thing for me because that's like where I'm at. And just hearing Jesus be like, dude, if you just believe, that will affect people. Like you don't have to do anything else to affect people. You just need to believe the truth. And obviously there will be work and there will be stuff that will flow out of the being and the believing. But the fact is that's the simplest thing to affect people, is just believing it. And yeah, that blew my mind. I was
It is mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's blowing my mind.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the last thing I was going to say about Thomas, is like how Jesus like met Thomas's requirements, so
Yeah.
to speak, and like will meet us like where we're at. Like we can kind of draw on that, you know?
Another thought was like,
Yeah.
I think that I don't know, like if his doubts were, I think we like think that they were like unearnest, but I think they were earnest. Like I think he
Yeah.
wanted to believe, right?
Yeah.
He just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I think there is a difference between somebody earnestly doubting God and somebody who's trying to talk themselves into disbelief because they don't want to believe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a difference in someone who's like, I'm open to it, I just don't believe because of like I have doubts, versus somebody who is like maybe claims that they're open to it but really isn't. And that's I think that like the Lord can definitely change their hearts, and
It's like a hard heart, essentially.
soften their hard heart to open their blind eyes to see what's really been in front of them the whole time.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like you seek and you find, right?
Mhm.
Like when you look, you find God. But a lot of people aren't looking earnestly.
It's
Yeah.
like
They think they are.
draw
but-
near to God,
and he will draw near to you. Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's also an example of like, I think Thomas, and it's not perfect earnest. Like we're not perfect, right? We're never gonna like really fully without sin, like until the Lord comes back, fully without sin, like doubt God without like bad doubt, but it's just cool to see the grace, but also the truth and like the rightness and justness kind of together in that. Like he was still who he was. He didn't change who he was for Thomas.
Yeah.
He didn't like bend over backwards really to like go out of his way to these all signs and stuff. He just revealed himself to be who he was.
Yeah.
Which I think is profound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it reminds me, because earlier you were saying, we were talking about how like we always want to see ourselves as the hero in the biblical narrative. You know, we're always like
reading ourselves in.
We're always like reading ourselves in, like, oh yeah, I'm David when he kills Goliath. Or like, you know, I'm Noah when he gets everybody on the ark and like, you know, keeps all these people alive, like all that stuff. And
this isn't the Lord of the Rings, guys.
Yeah, you know, and
we're not Frodo.
And I don't want to be Frodo anyway. Jesus, that's a lot of responsibility. Good Lord. But you know, it's funny that we always are like putting ourselves in the shoes of the hero, so to speak. But in reality, there's one hero in the book.
Amen.
You know, and the thing is we can't put ourselves in those shoes, because if you look at it, none of those guys and gals were heroes. None of them. Like David would be nothing without God. And, you know, Peter would be nobody without Jesus. And like all of these people that we, you know, anytime they have a shining moment, we're always like, yeah, I see myself there. It's like that's not even Peter, bro. Like him doing something successful to build the church is like Jesus, is God using Peter,
redeeming his
right?
broken efforts. Like he thought Jesus was trying to raise a Roman insurrection. Like like he missed. You know, we all would have missed it. But we're like, they were so blind they couldn't see it. But they thought that Jesus was genuinely going to deliver them from the Roman Empire.
It's like like I mean I believe that obviously prophecy is a thing, and I believe all that, but I also believe that I believe that we have a certain amount of free will under sovereignty, and I believe that God knows us inside and out 100%. And so I believe that the prophecy of Peter denying is based in the fact that God knew Peter in and out. And he knew that once Peter realized Jesus was not there to conquer the Romans, that he was going to be pissed and he was going to not want to know that guy. So like Peter denying Jesus logically makes sense. It's not just because it's prophesied. It's because Peter was pissed off at Jesus and he was like, no, I don't know that guy.
He couldn't help to fulfill the
Yeah.
prophecy.
And
in
he's a human.
and in reality, I also think that he kind of was telling the truth, because he really didn't know who Jesus was.
Mm.
If through these 3 years, it was, in his head, he was like, yeah, you're going to conquer Rome.
He was
know?
having crisis, like
Yeah.
seeing Jesus there, like being beaten, not wanting to be associated. He was afraid. He was confused. He was
Yeah.
he was misunderstanding the mission. The kingdom of God was a real government that they wanted. Like,
Yeah.
it's just interesting to
And
think about that.
it brings me to my discipleship group is jokingly called the Sinners Club. Like that's what I call it. But it brings me to the reason why I call it that, is because I think, so there's this song called Remember to Remember. It's by Stephen Curtis Chapman, Throwing It Back. But it's about this idea that like a big part of the Christian faith is remembering. And so like, remembering the moments that God has shown up and that God has delivered you and all of those things, and like being very mindful.
Do not forget.
Like remembering all the things that your faith is based in. And I think one of the things that, especially with American culture, we like don't remember is the fact that we're broken, that we're sinners. Because I don't think it's bad to recognize that, because the thing is
Agreed.
we are,
Mhm.
and obviously when we're looking at the story of the Bible, like we want to put us in the shoes of the hero. And as I said, there's only one hero, and it's Jesus. And the thing is like, if we don't remember that we're broken and that we're sinners, why do we need Jesus?
Mhm.
Like if we don't remind ourselves that we sin, there's no point to be saved. Like if we don't need saving, then what's the point?
Right.
And so it delves into everyday life. It's like, why should I care about what I look like if there's no reason? Like everything breaks down
And
if we don't have
I
a
think you
savior.
see that on a majority in the culture too, and even the idea of backlash against Christianity is because it's based on the idea, like Christians do and non-Christians, like the idea that being a good person or being without fault equals like salvation, right?
Yeah.
Like it's such a simple concept, but like you said, it permeates into even how we admit fault in normal secular conversations with people. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like be rude to you, or I didn't
Yeah.
mean to like be mean or whatever. And obviously sometimes those words get diluted, but
Yeah.
but truly being earnest even to people who aren't Christians, to love our neighbor as ourselves, because again, we know how bad we are without
Yeah.
Christ. And it's so easy to forget that, but it's even more apparent when you look at culture who doesn't want to admit like that we're wrong, like because you'll get canceled, right? Like no one wants to admit that, yeah, I partied in high school, or I said things that were offensive, or I did these things. Like
Yeah.
like everyone wants to pretend like, oh,
Yeah.
let's shame this person for that, or like let's do
Yeah.
this for that. It's like, really? Because I've said things that were bad.
Yeah.
Like I think things that are bad. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
We all do, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's really bizarre because it is like the same human condition we've been struggling with all of existence, and it's that we are God, or could be God, or could be perfect like God, and in our own power.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
I just, it's like, I feel that in society right now, like there's this idea where, this attitude where it's like, I don't care about anything. Like I'm just going to do whatever I want. I'm going to be my own, be my own unique person, and
Live my truth.
and just not, live my truth. And I'm just not going to care about like what other people think, which sounds great. But at the same time, it's like, that also leads into like, and I can be rude to people because it's like, it's my truth. It's who I am. And I'm not going to ask forgiveness for that because I don't care, and it becomes this like thing, and it spirals. And, and it's that admitting, taking the second to admit like, you know what, I'm not perfect, and I can still like what people really want is like, I want to have the confidence of living boldly without caring what other people think. Um, but what it turns into is like, I'm not going to care what people think about any decision I make ever.
Well, it's usually a facade, right? They
Yeah.
really still do care.
And it's very, there's a like deep seated insecurity that they have to cover up with like this,
I don't care.
nonchalance.
I'm going to prove that I don't care.
Yeah. And it's like,
that's interesting.
it's like, you know what? Like, I would rather like be able to live a bold, confident life and screw up a ton and ask for forgiveness for it than live a life where I just don't care about any decision I make or how it affects people. Like, cause I mean, I used to be there like that. That's definitely, like out of high school, that was definitely a thing, was like, I wanted to be super confident. I wanted to be this person that like, just didn't care what other people think. And the thing that sucks is when you say like, I don't care what other people think, that includes like both positive and negative stuff. And, it becomes very empty, because if you don't care what other people think, like, you lose the good with the bad, and it becomes like very, very lonely.
We're not designed to live alone.
Yeah. And we should care. We should care what other people think. Not in the amount that it like defines us.
Mm-hmm.
All in balance.
But we should definitely care.
Yeah.
We're really bad at balance.
Well, it's like, just at the end of the day, it's not making something worldly like the end all be all for you or like your existence, and making God that center of what you're standing on, what you're pulling from, like what you're relying on. Like, if you go to, we were actually just talking about this at youth group last night, but it's like, the message was kind of about like, if you go to like food or like your favorite videos or like whatever, like for like in a time of you're down or you had a rough day or whatever, like you're kind of, you are supplementing God's peace for something of the world and trying to stand on that. And ultimately it'll let you down at some point. It might take care of that momentarily, but you'll just keep
distract yourself
coming back to it. Yeah. It's all just distraction.
Yeah. I've tried to do something that we've been trying to do in life is like have more moments of silence with God. And obviously like silence, prayer, scripture, like all those things. And I've been trying to like work that into life, because something that we've been focusing on is like being instead of doing, because the Western church is very much about doing for God. And then like, it just is very empty. And it's like, your doing should be an outpouring of your being. And so we've been exploring a lot of those things. And one of the things that I did recently, so something I explored during the last several years of like deconstructing faith and things like that is, I like looked a little bit into Buddhism and some of their practices, and just like different things like that. And one of the things that they do that I find really interesting, Buddhist monks will, when they're eating a meal, they tend to eat slower than Americans. But what they do is they will, as they're eating the meal, they think about where it came from, and they have like gratitude for where it's coming from. And so like, if they're eating eggs, they then during their meal start to think about, being thankful for the chicken that laid the egg, being thankful for the cook that cooked the egg, being thankful for the farmer that owns the chickens, and like just having this gratitude for their food as they eat it. And obviously all these like Buddhist practices and meditations and things like that are good, but they're not like based in Christ. So they're
based on enlightenment.
So there's like there's no meat to it.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that for a little bit, just to like express, just to like be grateful for things and being grateful for the things that I take for granted and stuff like that. But a couple days ago, I made breakfast. I made eggs, bacon, and toast and coffee, right? And when I got up that morning, one of the things I had on my mind was like, I want to make time for silence with God, where we can have silence. I want to make time for prayer. But honestly, what I really want is I want like God to be in everything that I do. Like I want to live life with Him. I don't want to just I don't want to compartmentalize it. Because my goal would be like, okay, if I have quiet time in the morning with God, I want that to be like how we start our day, not like this is the time that we have together and then I do my day without you kind of thing. So I got up and I made breakfast, and I was just quiet while I was making breakfast and coffee. And then when I sat down, I was like, you know what? I like this Buddhist monk idea, but instead of just like being grateful,
Thanking the universe,
I want to like actually thank who made it possible. Right. And so, and I was just by myself eating my food, and I'd like take a bite of eggs, and I'm just like, God, thanks for this chicken that laid this egg, which sounds like super funny, but it was just like,
I love that.
like, and then, I'm eating this bacon and I'm like, thank you for this pig. Like, and then coffee, like I'm a little more educated on where that comes from. So I was like, thank you for the farmers that work all year to make this happen. And like, thank you for their sweat, like their hard work. And thank you for the markets that make it possible for coffee in other countries to get to my cup. Like, thank you for, like all this stuff. And it really changed my perspective on the day, and just made me like, obviously being grateful changes things, but when, like reframing that and being like, man, like God made this happen. Like God makes this possible. And
there's also we did a series on mental health back in December at Berkeley, and one of the things, it's like a scientific study that when you're grateful and thankful, it's essentially impossible to have anxious thoughts at the exact same time as you're practicing like gratitude. And that's just kind of like a wild thing to think about and like ponder. But there's so much to that, where there's so many ways to do that, and I love that, and I kind of want to do that.
It's a discipline too. Like once you start doing it, it's almost addicting. Like, it's when scriptures say pray without ceasing. I think we like often like, what does that mean?
Overcomplicate that.
But I think it's like a mindfulness of God in everything, right? Like, it's not necessarily like, it's a continuous dear Lord, amen. But it's a stream of consciousness of God's presence where you are, and his responsibility for the life you're living. And like what you were saying, like it's meaningless when I'm sure it's beneficial for Buddhists as they think the ether.
Yeah, I mean, being grateful is just good.
It's good, and that's common grace. I would say that's like God wove that into the fabric of what He made. But when you think about it, it's a little bit funny that there isn't a person to be thanked. It's you're thanking random. It's like thanking a pot versus the potter, right?
Yeah.
It's like, Lord, like thank you, clay, for being this pot. Versus like thank you, potter, who made the pot. Or like it doesn't make sense when you like when we trace things back. Like it's like we're sitting in this building. We're like, thank you, wood, for making this building.
It's thank you, and what is seriously. What is this unto?
It's unto nothing.
Right.
It's unto ourselves. It's unto the universe. It's unto emptiness. I can't really say for sure. And I'm not saying that to try and demean people who do that. I know it's beneficial. I'm glad that they're at least in a decent spot.
I think what you said about like it helping with anxious thoughts is like that's a real thing. Even if you don't thank God, just like thinking about your life, being like, man, I'm grateful that I have food on the table, and being thankful is good.
Right.
But being thankful and thanking the person who made it possible is better.
The other thing that my pastor at church talks about is trusting the plan giver more than the plan. And that's what that thing made me think of, like the potter versus the actual pot itself. Like
He can make another pot.
Exactly.
Like,
But even like for the good things that he gives us, like again, like not putting our thanks and gratefulness in those things themselves, but in the one who brought those things to our lives, like in reality, is easier said than done. I think,
Yeah.
like it's an everyday conscious choice, just like a lot of other spiritual disciplines, and just trusting God. Like that's a conscious decision that we make every day. It's not like a one and done. And I think kind of circling back to like like people's spiritual journeys being man-made, I think that is when it kind of falls apart, when they realize that they've been trusting in things that aren't the Lord, like himself. And we kind of touched on that with Jacob's episode too. It's like, oh, just throw a pad on and like that's the Holy Spirit. It's like, oh no. Like
a miracle can happen now.
Yeah.
For the Spirit of the Lord is here.
Yeah. For we started the song.
For the Spirit of the pad is here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's real. I think we do try to manufacture a lot.
And production.
And a little background on my time working in ministry. I was a worship leader, and one of the reason that I left, the short version, the reason that I left, I absolutely loved the church, and it's a great place, and I still meet pretty regularly with one of the pastors, and it's like I love them. But the reason that I left was I found myself in my free time like not wanting to read the Bible and like not wanting to do a lot of stuff that is like crucial to your faith, because I was like, this feels like work. This feels like, it just became very very trivial, because it was just like, this is all like stuff that's manufactured for my work, and like I don't want to do that. And so it's interesting, because it's hard. Like you can fall into this like manufactured program if you let yourself.
Right.
You can fall into it.
Yeah. I'm supposed to raise my hands on this chorus because there was a major chord that lifted. Like, it's, and not to say that you can't use music as a vehicle to bring people to God.
Yeah.
But understanding the difference.
Yeah.
One of my favorite songs is by Shane and Shane, The Heart of Worship. And one of the lines is like, when the music fades, when all is stripped away.
Yeah.
Like, where is your heart? Like after the haze dissipates out of the room, and like after the house lights come on, like, can you still feel the same? Is it an emotional manipulation, or is it, that's not a blanket statement.
Yeah.
It's real. It's not all everywhere, but it's true. And I think it's good to wrestle with that and like be conscious of that in our spiritual walks. And as we become spiritually mature on the course that God has for us, questioning those things is healthy.
Yeah.
And
and something interesting about the breakfast thing is, so like I had this conversation with God while I'm eating, and then like I got dressed and I left for work, and I threw on some music, and it was really interesting it was like metal. It was like whatever. And so I just threw on some music and was rocking out, and like I just had this image in my head that like Jesus was just like in my car rocking out. And it was really cool, cuz like I feel like he was there just jamming, just like hanging out.
I picture that a lot. I do the same thing.
And it was cool. I was like, this is so cool that I like the recognition of how he's working in our life by just recognizing like how fantastical it is that I got coffee from another country that somebody grew, became this thing where I was like recognizing that God is like, he's like in the car with me just rocking out and like all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it definitely like changed my perspective, and it makes me think, well, like Mother Teresa got interviewed once, and she talked about, so the interviewer was like, I noticed before I got here that you were sitting outside. What were you doing? She said, I was listening. And the interviewer asks, what were you listening for? She says, well, I was listening to God. And the interviewer says, well, did God say anything? She said, no, he was listening to me. And it was just like this beautiful thing where they were just like sitting there listening to each other and like didn't talk. And then she goes on to talk about how like he didn't actually like he doesn't really say much. Oftentimes we just listen to each other. And that's kind of how I felt when I was in the car, just like listening to music and like feeling God being present there. And like we weren't talking, we were just hanging out, listening to music. And it's like that.
That's like friendship.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to say something, but you just enjoy company.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was really a cool experience. And now like it makes me just want to like lean into those practices so that I can have those moments where I'm not actually trying to have a relationship with God, and it just like naturally is happening because we're friends.
Well, I think that's where like the heart of sanctification should drive as well, right? Like through the relationship. And there is an aspect of spiritual discipline where like when you don't feel like it, I'm going to pray, I'm going to do these things because I know that I'm emotional and like that. But the result of showing up and being disciplined is being mindful of God when you go out, and like when you are aware of like the Lord in your day-to-day life, like it's very difficult to like you want to please him. Like it's hard to separate, like it's hard to live two lives. It's hard to like go and like you're more sensitive to the things that his heart is sensitive to, right? Like I think that's where the heart of sanctification is. It's not just a legalism, it's not just a performance to achieve God's presence or approval. It's like I get to go experience God through how I live. And just like if I was with my friend who I know like doesn't like something, I wouldn't just like do that thing when they're around. Or like, you want to please the person that like pleases you. Like like my wife, like if she likes a certain style of music or doesn't, I'm not going to go in the car and turn on something that like I know she isn't enjoying. I'm just mindful of her. And it's like this heart of just wanting to please the people that I love. And I think that that's the place where like I think that achieving sanctification, the journey of sanctification really is like I think that's what Jesus desires. I think this is what God's desire is. It's true worship. It's not just acts. It's not empty sacrifices or
checking a box.
Yeah, checking a box. It's like relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's cool because that's I definitely. It's like sometimes I don't want to read the Bible. Sometimes I don't want to pray. A lot of times I don't. But after I'm like, oof, like. I don't know why I ever don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like it's never a bad experience.
Right.
Like, so that's such a good reminder, man.
It is.
And I'm really thankful to God and for you for coming on today and getting to just hang out more and chat and even getting to know you to begin with.
For sure.
It's
I'm happy to be here. It's awesome.
I'm just thankful.
Same.
Yeah.
Thank you. Listeners for checking us out,
Mm-hmm.
staying this long through all of our rabbit trails and tangents. We are doing this really I guess we're sharing this for hopefully your benefit. We always feel like we're maybe the chief beneficiaries, but we're thankful to be able to do this. Thank you to Josh at Local Legend for letting us record here in this sweet space. So we're not doing it in my living room.
Big thanks to Quickwater Coffee for sponsoring. As always,
we did not drink today.
We did not. But
typically do.
You're here in spirit. His bag's in the intro that we.
Yeah, there you go.
That's true.
Always in
like
the show notes. But go check out Quickwater if you haven't in downtown Rockford. Air roasted, amazing coffee. Go say hi to Steven.
Highly recommend checking out the American Hotel System as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Links in description and show notes.
Yes, you guys met Jacob last week. So stoked you get to meet CT.
Yeah.
And he told us before we got on air that they just got their masters back for the new EP.
Yeah.
So that's coming out shortly.
Yes.
So check that out.
Mm-hmm.
When it does. I'm sure there's like stuff on your website and links and stuff that they can interact before it's even out. But you guys are playing shows all over around town.
Yeah, we're playing a lot. You can go to theamericanhotelsystem.com and find all our good stuff. There's currently we have an email list that you'll want to sign up for as soon as possible. There's some cool stuff that you're gonna get if you sign up. We're just starting it, so like if you sign up, there's gonna be some cool things. So I would do that, and then all of our show dates are on our website, and yeah, we'll be doing a few festivals this summer and playing all over.
Yeah. I love supporting music and bands of great people,
Yes.
people that I like,
Well, thank you.
Yes.
and I like you. I like Jacob. I like the band.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I can genuinely recommend you guys. Like,
Yes.
I have
That's awesome.
I honestly, like, when I listen to a band, if I find things out about them that I like don't like, I honestly like have a hard time listening to their music again. And maybe that's superficial or something, but it's more because like I feel like I just maybe connect like the music to the person, right? Like the authenticity or whatever through that. So
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
guys are authentic and your music
Thank you.
is. So
Absolutely.
seriously check it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
With
Thanks
that,
again, guys.
Well,
yes.
can we do music?
Let's do
Of
that.
course.
Record
Yeah.
time.
What you got?
What am I listening? Is that the question? Like what I'm listening to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
so typically we just do an album, but you know,
Sweet.
it's open ended.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, so the album I was listening to with Jesus was August Burns Red has a new album called Death Below.
Okay.
It's really cool. There's a lot of features on it, and the first half of the album sounds like every August Burns Red album, but the second half is really, really different and interesting, and it was a lot of fun. I had to take it. I'm very, very picky with metal, so I actually had to take the album in 2 doses because it can kind of like deaden your ears and it just all sounds the same. So I had to take it in 2 doses, but that was a fun adventure. I feel like there was something else I was listening to.
What's your favorite AFI album?
Favorite AFI album? Burials. That's the one.
Okay.
Came out in 2013. The album is so good.
I honestly haven't heard much of their music, so
I
I'm
haven't
excited
either.
to dig into that.
Yeah, you got about like 30 years worth of music that you can listen to. It's great.
Amazing.
Sick.
So, but Burials is a great first album to check out from them. It's kind of like a culmination of all the different styles they went through from, I think they started in 91, so like, or 95, something like that. But from when they started in
Sure.
the 90s up until 2013, like Burials kind of encapsulates like
Their sound.
all of their sound. It's really, really good.
Sick.
It's a great
I'm
album.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have an album. Do you?
I don't either.
So we'll just
Lame.
we'll throw down to, well, I mean, I have some, but none that I feel as strongly about as ones you've given, and you've given too. So we'll just
Yeah.
stick
Yeah,
with
yeah.
your
Yeah.
recommendations
Yep.
today.
Sick.
But
That's perfect.
yeah, dude. Well, actually, my album is yours once it drops. So
Hey.
There you go.
Hey,
sweet. Well, thanks again, Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
And thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
Mhm.
Thanks for having me.